Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this daily science fiction extravaganza, commonly known as Tales from Outer Space. Taken from the subreddit HFY. All the relevant links will be down below. And, as always, I hope that you enjoy. And if you do, please consider supporting the channel. On to the science fiction. Story number 1. A rabbi, a priest, and a minister walk into a bar. Written by Infernalism. The knocking at the door pulled Ted's head up from his notes, slightly perplexed and smiling as he shook his head. "Come on in, Sam." The three were polite to a fault. They rigidly followed whatever rules were put in front of them, whatever the rules. Ted Straczynski was the head of the Terran Embassy here being the world dedicated to the Galactic Congress and all of its needs. It had a name that roughly translated to prosperity. It was a good name, really, for the GC. The Galactic Congress was comprised of every travel-capable civilization within the Spiral Galaxy, every single species that discovered one of a handful of ways to sidestep physics and travel faster than the speed of light was technically automatically invited to send a representative to join the Congress for representation. Sam was a Thrillbee, entered quietly, stepped up to Straczynski's desk, bowed its head once, and thrust one of its limbs forward for Ted to take and pump up and down, 2 times exactly, before speaking. "Ambassador Straczynski." "Sam, please, I've told you before, I'm just Ted." "Yes, of course, Ambassador, we really need to talk." The three were a remarkable race, avian in nature. They had evolved on a world with a great deal of gravimetric stress. On a smaller world, this would have resulted in earthquakes, volcanoes, and other dreadful events. But on Threen, it was a very large world, an exoplanet, in fact. The gravimetric pull from the numerous moons and the twin stars resulted in amazingly tall mountain ranges that pushed up into the skies. The Threen had evolved from an avian species that were born and raised in the mountains, originally clinging to the mountain sides with the 2 sets of arms and their legs, with massive, powerful wings that let them soar on the winds between the many thousands of mountain ranges that made up the bulk of the Threen territory. Such harsh environment had led to a culture where leaders were followed without question, but leaders were constantly tested by, literally, rules that carved into stone, ethical tests, morality tests. The combination of the two resulted in a people that adhered to the rules and laws no matter what, as long as the rules and rulers were deemed just and proper. So, if a Threen is coming to you talking about a problem, 99% of the time, broken rules are involved in somehow. "Is this about our application to the Congress?" No. Your people are a prime candidate for membership. You are one of the more civilized simian races that we've come across in a long time. They settled upon the chairs in the room, sat next to the official office of the Terran ambassador. The room had a lovely view of, a very pretty building right next door. Ted had expected something like that. Brand new applicant species do not get offices with a grand view of prosperity. And Earth had just put in the application this year. Then, what exactly is the issue? Ted was an amiable sort, a consummate diplomat sort. He'd been the head of the First Contact organization that had been tasked with meeting other species. A great job, boring as hell for the first 10 years, but very fulfilling, in a rehearsal sort of way. He'd been on board the UN craft of the Intrepid when it made its first slipstream jump and the first met agents of the GC. By nature, it took a lot to upset him. Sam, on the other hand, "I know you've received a copy of the Galactic Congress rule set. I know, I sent it to you myself." "Sam," a moment then, spit it out. Me? No, your people. Okay, go on." Deeper sigh and a chittering from the avian before he continued. "Your people are in direct violation of the 3rd requirement for membership." "Ah, that. I don't understand," he said. Sam knew he did. "Ambassador, if I may, Rule 3 of the Galactic Congress Compact. No species shall be admitted into the Galactic Congress or allowed to remain in the Galactic Congress while they still have state-sponsored religion of any kind." "We don't and all fund directly or indirectly, and all support directly or indirectly any religion whatsoever. You make it sound so serious. Ambassador, Sam, please, Ted. Ambassador, this is a serious matter. You need to see it as such. I do see it as such, Sam. I just, don't see how we're violating it. You and I both discussed this before, right? They had. Rule 3 was widely accepted as being a necessary evil, since by the time species reached this level of technological advancement, only 2 major causes remained that led to warfare, and one of them was religion. However, asking a galaxy to forgo religion was a ridiculous notion. Those species that still clung to the religious were allowed to do so quietly. Not open churches, no religious gatherings, no officially recognized religious figures, and, to their credit, the major religions of Earth had reacted fairly well to the news, with the Pope being the first major head of the earthen religion to take off his hat and step down from this pulpit. Video from a certain angle suggested an immense amount of relief on his face as he did so. So, religion was allowed, just, no open expressions and obvious churches, not a terribly high price to pay for the amount of technology that would be made available to them of the official entry into the GC. It would mean an end to hunger, poverty, disease, and death would be delayed for centuries. Medical advancements that sounded straight out of the wildest of sci-fi dramas. With that as a price, it wasn't hard for the people of Earth to set aside their official churches and grandiose pomp and circumstance. Yes, we talked about this, and you and your people have done a grand job adhering to those rules. Except what? The Threen pulled out a Congress PDA, tapped a few times. 3 months ago, a large compound was leased on one of your island chains called Nippon, Japan. Really? Your people need to get to work on finding a singular language. We're working on it. What's the problem with the compound? Alien species have been purchasing and leasing small bits of land on Earth since we applied to the GC. And, as far as I can tell, that's not an uncommon thing. So again, Sam, what's the problem? It's a temple, Ted. Oh, yes, Threen only ever used personal names to make a point. That point had been made. If the Roxian were running a temple out of the earthen location, it jeopardized both the Roxians' position in the GC, but mostly it kept Earth from being admitted. Fine. Okay, we'll deal with it. I should hope so, Ted. Your people would be a tremendous boon to the Congress, and your people would see an incredible jump in quality of living. Yeah, I read the brochure. Irate, frustrated, and embarrassed. Sam was a diplomat too, so he was considering adapt and reading alien species better than most. The avian stood again and bowed and offered his hand in a accepted fashion before turning and leaving Ted to stare at the PDA and sigh rather loudly to himself. The desk chimed softly. Yes, Ambassador, you have an unscheduled visitor. Tall, avian, probably upset. Yes, sir. Great, send him in, and hold my calls. Ted had time to note that Sam's feathers were, quite literally, ruffled as he gave the sharp bow and a thrust of the hand forward at him as if it were a knife. Twice even, then the ambassador was slow to take it and shake it. Ambassador, I begin to wonder if you and your people truly grasp what's at stake here. Good to see you too, Sam. Standing, looking down, and looking impossibly frustrated and even a bit angry, the avian didn't even note the greeting. Do you have any idea of what you're risking here? Do you? Congressional membership is required to make use of designated FTL corridors. Congressional membership is required to make use of Galactic Technological Library and its teachers, assistants, and guides. Congressional members are required to be a part of the greater galaxy, and you're very close to being rejection. Rejection means 50 of your solar cycles before you can even apply again. No exceptions. Sam, you need to calm down. I will not calm down, Ted. Your people will be left behind with no chance of reapplying for what amounts to 2 of your generations at the earliest. You actually took time to look that up. Yeah, I did. Thank you. You're very welcome. Ted put his hand to forestall another tirade. Sam, please. And I haven't even started on the sanctions that'll be put on the Roxians. Sam, stop. A loud thunk from the ambassador brought his cup down hard enough to have brown liquid splashed about, and Sam was suddenly reminded of the Terran simian origins. We talked to the Roxian delegation. They admitted to what they were doing, that they're using the compound not as a relaxation sample, but a temple. They admitted as much to us as well. Did they give you any problems when you told them that they'd have to shut it down? We didn't tell them to shut it down. Silence then, just a few seconds. But Ted saw the avian swelling up with anger and knew a breath when he jumped in quickly to stall the verbal storm that was coming. Rule 3 of the Galactic Congress Compact: no species shall be admitted to the Galactic Congress or allowed to remain in the Galactic Congress while they still have state-sponsored religion of any kind and or fund, directly or indirectly, and or support directly or indirectly any religion whatsoever. And you both are in violation of that very major rule. We terminated the lease contract. They're not paying us for the land anymore. That means the Roxan are no longer in violation of that rule. What? Ted shouldn't have taken joy in that, but he did. Kinda. And, as I'm sure you already know, 6 other species have contacted us requesting something similar. I'd list off the names here, but I suspect you already know who they are. Sam did, and they were a strange mix of powerful Congress members, almost as old as the Congress itself, and newer species. 7? The Swan Confederacy purchased a strip of land to be used as a scientific station to study your wildlife on your continent Africa. Well, damn, we'll have to call them and refund them their money. Ambassador, Ted, look. I talked to the Roxian personally. It's a group of about 20 Roxian in a compound consisting of 6 buildings. They offer sacrifices of incense and song when the sun comes up. They sing and they eat together, and they're not harming anyone. They're in direct violation. The Congress will sanction them, no matter how long they've been a member, and a newer species will likely be expelled. The avian seemed equal parts angry and disappointed. Sam, Ambassador, you do not understand. These rules were put in place for a good reason. Before the Congress, the galaxy was a terrible place. Ideological and religious strife both within the species themselves and between whole species fighting over a god was true and which ones were false. It was a horrible time where millions died for no other reason than pride and ego. When the Congress was formed, the members themselves chose to do this, to shun the old ways, to move forward without religion or ideology bringing us into needless conflict. I thought you understood this. We explained all of this to you when we first went over the rules. They're not hurting anyone, Sam. Plus, you can't sanction them. Excuse me, Ambassador. The rule states that a member or applicant cannot have official state, religion, or support or finance any religion whatsoever. The 7, they have compounds here on Earth that are religiously oriented and are being funded by us, not their governments, not their people in any way. We're sheltering them, feeding them, protecting them, and allowing them to live on Terran land while they do whatever it is they want to do. Not a single penny is being accepted, and all the previous purchases have been refunded. That doesn't let you off the hook, Ambassador. Yeah. Something of a shrug there, a bit of a smile, while the GC representative wrapped his head around that. Earth is officially withdrawing its application for membership on the Galactic Congress. The paperwork's already been started. They should get it in the morning. They'll save the Congress a hassle and embarrassment of having to reject us. You can't just... I've already arranged to have a lease here terminated early. The movers will be here by the end of the week. The Earthen Ambassador stood and held his hand out and, God bless him, the Threen took it automatically without thinking. Sam, it's been a real goddamn pleasure knowing you. Ted, you can't do this. Your people are throwing away paradise. I know. We've done that once or twice in the past. It's been fun, but I gotta finish up this paperwork. They're throwing me out the day after tomorrow. A smile there. The distressed Threen recognized it as a jest, a bit of humor to try and lift his spirits. The Earthen Ambassador was obviously already at ease with this decision. Why? Why do this? If you'd seen them crouched there on the rocks, looking at the east as the sun came up, and then singing, never mind. I can't explain it. This is something we have to do. Why? Why you... He liked the Terran people. This was plainly very distressing to the avian, and that made Ted's smile grow all the wider. Damn, Sam, you're a good person. By us, because no one else is doing it. You take care of yourself, Sam." The Threen representative didn't want to let go of the ambassador's hand, but of course, after a few long seconds, he did. The rules regarding such parting gestures were very specific. Don't be clingy. He left without another word, heading back towards his office to give his superiors the news that they likely already knew, as well as a vague and frustrating reasoning behind it. The news of Earth's withdrawal from the barely noted on the galactic stage. There were reports and vague references to issues regarding the primary rules regarding membership, but nothing else was noted on the matter, and it faded from sight in only a few short cycles. The Roxian and the Swan and all the others, and as time passed, there were many others who had skirted the rules regarding membership, were unofficially reprimanded for their playing around with the fundamental rules of their joint society. Earth itself continued on as it had. Surprisingly, the old organized religions did not take up their mantles again. Perhaps the 5 years that they'd spent unofficial had taught them something. Regardless, the GC kept close tabs on Earth, watching for any kind of unexpected technological advancement, the appearance on alien technology, or any other GC forbidden payments of any kind. To their credit, the growing number of species that took up residence on Earth made no effort to skirt the rules any further. In truth, it terrified the GC to see so many of their logical and rational and secular members be okay with the open expression of theological opposition on Earth. The prevailing theory was that the various temples would, eventually, come to open conflict, and it would be Earth that paid the price in blood and devastation. The Galactic Congress was sure of it. It was just a matter of time. Ted had been born in Pennsylvania, old cold country, so he wasn't unaccustomed to the cold, but the air was so thin up here. He was glad to have been able to find a seat before the crowds had gathered. If he was being honest with himself, he didn't really miss his old job. He missed the people he'd met, but he didn't miss the job. This was so much better. The babble of the crowd, mixed above a dozen languages, slowly came to a stop as the singers began. Overhead, circling, great billowing wings shining in the bright noonday sunlight, a dozen singers looped and danced in the air, intricate, delicate, swooping at each other at the crest of each verse, boring away again, only to rise again, singing out praises to their God. There were undoubtedly some mistakes in there, but he was hardly an expert and judge of the quality, and they could hardly be blamed for making those mistakes. It had been some several hundred years since they had sung those songs openly and danced those dances at all. There was a shifting beside him, and he smiled to himself, but he just couldn't tear his eyes away from the ballet and danced overhead. He watched on in silence for long minutes before the song came to a joyous conclusion and the flyers descended to their retreat on the mountainside. No applause, no whistling, just a silence, a reverence. Even the crowd disassembled. He stayed in place as he did the one to his right. "You know you're risking your job by being here. Ambassador, I'm on vacation. Sam, I voted against them doing this. They understand, I'm sure. I hope so. That said, I'll have to find them and beg for their forgiveness. Having seen my people like this, Ted turned and grasped the Threen's shoulder. "I understand. I saw it too, but these are my people. To see them capable of such beauty and song and grace and form, I don't even know the name of the god that they praised there, but, doesn't matter, does it? No, I'll find that really doesn't matter. How are your people?" "Well, they're kind of irate that we never got the flying cars you told us about. I can't see the appeal of flying cars. Sam, you have wings. Point taken, but seriously, they're okay with it. We really didn't lose anything." He gestured upward to the empty sky, as if the Threen danced there still. "And look at what we've gained. So, you don't regret it?" "Not in the slightest. In the last 20 years, 37 different species have come here and taken advantage of the situation, and it has never, not once, turned bad. The founding members of the Galactic Congress did a very good thing when they set those rules down, but, sometimes the rules go too far." "My goodness, Sam, watch your language." Laughter then between them, friends for such a short time, and yet they embraced once again there in the sun. What will you do now, Sam? I'm going to fly over there and talk with my people. The Congress may frown on that. They may. And you? We have a new arrival next week, the Vaughn. Seriously, the Vaughn are some of our greatest scientists and technicians. They also developed on a world with active volcanoes and a lush temperate environment. We have a spot already picked out for them on a set of islands called Hawaii. I can't wait to see their faces. Your people are so, strange, Ambassador. You know, I've heard that once or twice before. It was good to see you, Sam. The human stood and watched as the Threen took off from the ground, went billowing of wings, swooped twice, and descended upon his people's sky temple in a welcoming cries. 30 years later, 2 major bits of news were the focus of the entire galactic society, both firsts in their own ways. The first was the first ever amending of the primary rules of the Galactic Congress as follows. Rule 3 of the Galactic Congress Compact. No species shall be admitted to the Galactic Congress or allowed to remain in the Galactic Congress while they still have a state-sponsored religion of any kind and or fund directly or indirectly and or support directly or indirectly any religion whatsoever, with a single exception of planet Earth. The second was the first unanimous admission to the Galactic Congress with no abstentions or nays by the peoples of Earth. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this dose of science fiction fun. I hope that you enjoyed. And if you did, please don't forget to support the author from the link down below. But if you want to support this channel, there are links as well down below for you to help with. But the easiest way would be to share this video. And, if you are so inclined, subscribe as well. I will see you all in the next episode, and I hope that you all have a fantastic time until then. Cheers.